deep blue, right outside of Washington, D.C., Maura, at a town hall last night. Quote, I think he had a great long-standing career, did a lot of great things, but I'm afraid it may be time for the Senate Democrats to get a new leader, unquote. How loud will these calls get from other members on Capitol Hill? Will they make a difference?
They should. The Democratic Party is in need of leadership, right? They've struggled, as was just pointed out, that for cycles now without having a strong voice and a strong leadership presence. And I think Dean Phillips during the last election, presidential election, called this out. He said it's time to pass the torch. And that was refused to do so until June of last year when Joe Biden was forced out of the race by somebody like Nancy Pelosi, who, by the way, will be 85 later this month, who has a net worth of almost $250 million. And she's ruled with an iron fist. She's somebody who has had a long career, but is still pulling the strings in leadership but not necessarily putting herself out there as much. But she certainly picks her moments. I do think the Democratic Party needs to find its own identity again and decide what their fight is about. If it's simply to be against Trump, that's obviously not working for them. They need to be for something as well. And I just think that this superiority complex that we've seen play out isn't going to be helpful and isn't really resonating with voters. So at this point, I think the calls for new leadership and new direction is going to be louder and louder.
Well, and this obviously stands in contrast to something Joe was alluding to earlier, which is that you currently have Republican members of Congress who are holding town halls back home in their districts and essentially getting shouted out of these places where they are speaking. We saw it most recently with Chuck Edwards of North Carolina, but there have been numerous other examples. Are Democrats doing Republicans a huge favor here, Maura, by having an unorganized opposition to something that clearly is a vulnerability for the people currently in the majority?
They're certainly not helping themselves, but yes, I think there is going to be ripe opportunities for Democrats to point out the failures, perhaps, of what was promised to them at the 2024 election and what's not being delivered. But instead, they can't find that voice. They can't find that path because they don't have leadership. And again, like I said, they've kind of operated from this moral superiority standpoint that isn't resonating and comes across as arrogant. And so at the end of the day, voters feel very left behind. They feel very dissatisfied with their government. And I think that you're seeing a lot more people who don't feel as though they belong to either party. And we saw it kind of in the last election as well, this political homelessness that we're watching play out. And I don't know that either party is doing a good job of explaining, I'm actually here for you, and here's how I'm going to do that for you. Here's why, and here's how. We're not seeing that. And I think as we get closer to the midterms, that's going to be a bigger problem for both parties, truly.